In March 1974, a group of farmers in Shaanxi, China, set out to do something completely ordinary. They were digging a well. There was no reason to think that mourning would be remembered around the world. No reason to imagine that every strike of the shovel was taking them closer to one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in human history. Every strike brought them closer to the past. But then they hit something hard. Not rock, not roots, not just broken pottery. It was something else entirely. What they had touched was the edge of a buried world, a world long forgotten by time. Because what emerged from the earth was not simply a collection of ancient statues. It was not even just a tomb. It was something far stranger. It was the remains of a dead emperor's second empire. The Terracotta Army is often described as a marvel of ancient art, and it certainly is that. Thousands of life-sized clay soldiers, lined in formation, each with distinct faces, armor, hairstyles and expressions. Truly a masterpiece of history. An army frozen in silence for more than 2,000 years. But the most fascinating thing about the Terracotta Army is not its beauty. It is the idea behind it. This was never just an army made to guard a grave. This was part of a much larger vision. The attempt by China's first emperor, Huang, to continue ruling even after death. That is what makes this story so powerful. In life, Huang had already done what no ruler before him had managed. In the 3rd century BC, he defeated rival kingdoms and unified China under a single imperial rule. He standardized writing, weights, measures, and even the width of roads and cart axles. He did not simply conquer territory, he imposed order on a fractured world. He was not content with being a king among many. He wanted to be the first true emperor. And once he had unified the living world, a new problem appeared. One no emperor could defeat. And then he faced the one problem no emperor could ever defeat: death itself. For most rulers, a tomb was a final resting place. For Huang, it seems to have been something else entirely. A continuation, a transfer of power from the world above ground to a world below it. That is why the Terracotta Army matters so much. It reveals not only what ancient China could build, but how one man imagined authority itself. Huang did not appear to see death as an end to rule. He seems to have treated it as a change of residence. And so, beneath the earth, an entire system was prepared for him. Not only soldiers, not only guards. There were chariots, horses, cavalry, officials, musicians, acrobats, a full society in clay. That simple haunting detail changes everything we thought we knew about his tomb. Because once musicians and officials appear in a tomb, we are no longer looking at mere defense. We are looking at a court, a bureaucracy, a performance of empire, a carefully arranged society meant to function around the emperor forever. In other words, Huang did not want protection alone. He wanted continuity. He wanted the machinery of his empire to survive him. This is what makes the Terracotta Army feel so eerie, even today. It is not just a burial site. It is a political statement made in clay. It says that the emperor who united China had no intention of surrendering his status simply because he died. And that is where the story becomes almost unsettling. Because Huang was famous not only for his power, but for his obsession with permanence. He sought immortality. He sent expeditions in search of magical elixirs. He wanted life to continue indefinitely, as if willpower and authority could overpower nature itself. But history gives this story a cruel twist. He did not become immortal. Instead, what survived was not his body, but his ambition. Not the man, but the structure of his power. Not eternal life, but an eternal image of rule. That is the quiet irony buried inside the Terracotta Army. Huang failed to live forever, yet he succeeded in sending a message across more than 2 millennia. Even in death, he intended to remain emperor. And when the farmers uncovered those first fragments in 1974, they were not merely discovering objects. They were interrupting a plan. For more than 2,000 years, this underground world had remained hidden, silent, ordered, waiting. The soldiers still stood in formation. The empire still held its shape. Time had passed above. Dynasties had risen and fallen. Revolutions had transformed China. And yet below the ground, the emperor's afterlife state had remained in place. That is what makes the discovery feel almost cinematic. It is as though history did not fully bury Huang's vision. It simply sealed it. And then one morning, by accident, ordinary farmers opened the door again. The scale of what they uncovered was astonishing. Thousands of soldiers, hundreds of horses and chariots. A vast necropolis connected to the tomb of the first emperor. Surveying has suggested an immense burial complex, one that stretched far beyond a single chamber or pit. The message was unmistakable. Qin Shi Huang did not prepare for death like an ordinary man. He prepared for it like a ruler who expected the next world to operate according to the same principles as this one: hierarchy, discipline, ceremony, command. That also helps explain why the Terracotta Army continues to fascinate people around the world. It is not only a Chinese story, though it is deeply rooted in Chinese history. It is also a human story about power and mortality. What does the most powerful man in the world do when he faces the one thing he cannot conquer? He builds, he organizes, he duplicates the world he knows. He tries, in effect, to out-argue death, and that may be the most compelling part of all. The Terracotta Army is made of clay, fragile material, breakable, earth turned into form, and yet that clay outlasted empires. The soldiers remained where living armies vanished. The emperor's vision endured where his own body could not. The very material that seems humble and vulnerable became the carrier of one of history's grandest statements of ambition. So perhaps the true wonder of the Terracotta Army is not simply that it was buried or that it was rediscovered. It is that it reveals something timeless about human beings. We leave messages because we know one day we will no longer be here to speak. But Qin Shi Huang did something larger than that. He left behind a world. He did not leave behind a statue of himself. A silent kingdom beneath the soil, arranged in ranks and rituals, designed to keep serving him long after the end of his life. So when we look at the Terracotta Army today, we are not just seeing ancient soldiers. We are seeing one of history's boldest acts of defiance. A man who unified China looked at death and answered it with an empire. And in 1974, that empire rose from the earth once more, not alive, but not gone either. The Terracotta Army was never just an army. It was Qin Shi Huang's final argument that an emperor should rule forever. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more.